Hello, hello.
Hello, hello, everyone. Happy episode 10.
Happy episode 10. Wow, 10 episodes in. This is amazing. So, hi, everybody. I'm Leanne.
And I'm Jason, and this is Let's Talk.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
This, this is the space where no topic is off limits. We'll cover topics from well-being to resilience, leadership, money, relationships, mindset, and so much more.
Here at Let's Talk, we bring different perspectives, real stories, and honest conversations because the things we don't often talk about end up being the things that really matter most.
And our goal here is simple. It really is to spark new ideas, shift mindsets, and give you practical tools that you can use in your life and in your leadership.
So, whether you're tuning in today for inspiration, growth, or just a fresh perspective,
Let's talk.
let's talk. So today we're diving into the most um, undervalued or underestimated topic of environmental well-being. The spaces we live, work, rest, and create in. They shape how we think, how we feel, and how we show up in the world. When we talk about well-being, people often think, mindset, motivation, relationships, right? Which we've talked about in past episodes. But your environment is actually the first domain. It influences your nervous system before you even think a thought.
Yeah. And you know me with the neuroscience, I always like to bring this in, Jason. But neuroscience shows us that your brain is constantly scanning your environment multiple times a second for cues of safety or stress. So, light, noise, clutter, colors, even the energy of the people around us, all of it shapes our moods, it shapes our focus, and our ability to regulate our emotions. You know, we've done sessions on emotion regulation. So the neuroscience or our brain is constantly scanning the environment for a threat state. So we need to make sure that our environment is healthy.
Yeah, absolutely, Leanne. And I think of an example, right? Like when my desk is cluttered, my brain feels like cluttered, overwhelmed. And when I create calm in my life, clear the surfaces, soften the lighting, maybe with a candle, I immediately shift into clarity and grounded energy.
Yeah, I hear that. And for me, it's about natural light, right? Like sunlight completely changes the way I feel and my productivity. So if I'm in a dark room all day, I feel flat, I feel slow, I feel unmotivated. But when I get outside into the elements or get some sunshine coming into my place, I actually feel like I'm alive, and my mood instantly enhances.
Yeah. So let's break this down for folks. Environmental well being has three key layers: our physical space, the design and feel of our surroundings that we live in and work in, our personal energy zones, how you use different spaces for different purposes and the energy that goes into those. And thirdly, our global environment, the stewardship we have for the world, which could be around climate change, it could be around, um, keeping things clean and, for like the next several generations to come. So those are the three key areas of environmental well-being.
Yeah. Leaving that a better footprint than where what you started with, right? In our external environments is really the key. But let's start today with our physical space because your body and your nervous system loves clarity. You know, like we actually need it in our psyche in order to kind of show up in the best way that we can. So visually calm spaces reduces that cortisol, you know, the stress hormone. It improves our emotional regulation. Like we're actually better at turning down the dial on those kind of threat states that we might feel. and they support healthier habits automatically. So when we feel good, we're more inclined to do good things, right? And so I just want to kind of touch on some of the things that we can take into consideration when we're thinking about our physical space. Now, the first one is the one that I mentioned already, natural light, because natural light increases dopamine. We get the serotonin from the sunshine, which makes us feel better. And that helps us to regulate how we're feeling, but it also helps our focus and our clarity when we're doing good work. Nature is another one. So I don't know about you, Jason, but I'm a tree hugger. And in my house, I've got lots of plants because we know that plants reduce stress. And again, it improves creativity. Plus, it sucks all those negative ions out of the air, right? Which we
Totally.
don't want in our spaces. And these days, with all the Wi Fi and all the stuff that's going on that we can't even see, having plants in your home or can really make a difference. If we choose clutter over calm, um, then we're going to be kind of stressed and feeling overwhelmed. Um, it, Clutter is kind of a micro stressor. Like we don't often notice the impact that it's having on us. But once you clean a space or clear it, you can actually feel that cognitive ease. It's just like, oh, I can breathe. So clutter almost feels suffocating to a certain degree, whereas that calm, clear space gives us that ease where we can breathe. Another aspect is color and texture. What colors have you got in your space? Because soft colors, again, regulate that nervous system. I remember a girlfriend of mine was so into colors, and she helped me design my house actually. And she came in with all these swatches, and she's like, "What color do you like?" I'm like, "I don't know. Like, I'm not one of these. Like, I'm not creative like that. This is your role." She said, "No. What I want you to do is look at each color and see how it makes you feel." And so I did that. We looked at colors and it was like, oh no, oh yeah. And then so the color palette that we chose for me created that sense of ease. And I could feel it in my nervous system. And I'd never taken the time to do that before. So I thought that was a really interesting process. So be really mindful of the color palette that you choose and the textures. You want a variety of textures because um, we don't want everything hard and clear. Like we need some softness in there as well.
Yeah.
And then there's things like sound, like, noise pollutions can actually spike adrenaline, and quiet restores balance. So I've got three kids in my house, and some days I'm like, no, stop the noise. My head can't take it. Like, really? Right? And it's not that they're being particularly noisy. It's just that if there's so much noise around, then I can't think. I can't actually function. It's like there's just too much noise in my head. And so I've got to kind of find a place that's quiet so I can restore that balance and come back to that equilibrium. So there's really a few things that we can take into consideration when we're thinking about our space. And Jason, if I had to ask you, what's one thing somebody could kind of change or do today to support their mental health through their space if they had to think about that?
Yeah, Leanne, that's a great question. And, one thing that comes to mind that's like easy and it's the cheapest nervous system reset where you don't have to spend any money is just open your blinds in your house or your apartment, wherever you live, and let the natural light in.
Yeah.
And, some people might say, well, like my apartment or whatever is at the, you know, I look out into the alleyway. There's still some natural light that comes in, but if you don't have great natural light, step outside and just even taking that 5 minute walk between, maybe a meeting or what have you, just getting that natural light and that fresh air is amazing when you're intentional about it, how it can just do that quick reset and it just brings this sense of calm that you didn't have like
Mm,
before.
yeah.
So that's the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah. And I would agree with that. I remember many years ago, I went through a relationship breakdown. And I was sitting in my house and all the blinds were closed, everything. Like I was just in my bubble. Like I was grieving and suffering as you do, when something like that ends. And my mum walked in and she opened every blind, like she's just like, nope, you need sunshine. And I was so angry because I didn't want that. Like I wanted to sit in the yuck. But as soon as she opened those blinds, my state shifted. Like it
Mhm.
was so interesting. Um, so I can't agree with you more than allowing that light to come in. And these days I get out of bed and the first thing that I do is open every blind in my house and let natural light in. And I don't get a lot of light into my house, but there is light around me.
Yeah.
Just because I'm not facing the right way for sun to actually pour in. But just having the blinds open gives me just that sense of calm,
Yeah.
which I think is really important.
Yeah, and I think, one thing for those, working professionals, right, who may work in a corporate office, or maybe not even a corporate office, but the light isn't great, you sit in a cubicle, again, go outside. Everyone gets a break at work, and it is amazing if you can't do it at home because you don't work at home. During the day, you can do it at work, but just be intentional about it. I mean, um, a few minutes of light and fresh air does amazing and wonders.
Yeah. And we know that, in order to get new thinking and have insights, right? Getting outside and away from the work is where those new things kind of pop into your mind anyway. So it can feel counterintuitive, but it actually does support us to get new thinking, to come up with new ideas, to solve the problems that we've been struggling to solve. For some reason, the second you step outside and you stop focusing on what it was and actually just enjoy the sunshine, it's amazing what happens in your brain and how these ideas pop in.
Yeah. And I think, not to continue to belabor this point, but, one thing that came to mind when you said that was, that box breeding, that you had mentioned several episodes ago. Nice to say several episodes, right? But just even when you're outside or in your house where you're in that natural light and fresh air, doing that just intentional box breathing for a minute or two also brings that extra, I think, layer of reset for you.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And, I work from home. And one of the things that I have to be really intentional about, Jason, these days is creating energy spaces within my home
Mhm.
because, and I share this with my clients as well, especially those who have hybrid kind of working environments. And post COVID, many, many more people are now working from home. And,
Mhm.
we've got to consider the concept of having different energy spaces within our home in order to, um, be able to switch off from one task or role and go into something else. So instead of having one room that's your everything room, your work, your dining table, your kitchen, like it's all together. We've got to try and create these micro zones that actually tell our brain what mode to shift into. And so if we can create these spaces somewhere else. So, that space in that corner is my workspace. And then this space over here is my relaxed space. And this
Yeah.
space is my family space. It makes such a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah. And what came to mind when you said that, and I'm going to go through some energy zone examples here in a moment, but like when you live in a studio apartment and space is like super limited, I think it's all on how you design that space.
Yeah.
When you are confined to a studio, because it's like sometimes it's like, well, it's all one room. Like, what do you want me to do, right? But I think for those listeners who do have that extra layer, I don't want to say difficulty, but just an extra layer of complexity, just keep that design feature in mind. Um, so some energy zone examples. So work zone, make sure that you have a clear desk, upright posture when you're sitting. It's so easy to slouch like this or be like this because we're so used to working on electronics and our phones, right? So that upright posture, is going to do amazing for your body. Also, minimal distractions. And I know sometimes when you live in a city, like, like the both of us do, sometimes there's just those extra distractions that, it's hard to get away from. Um, but I would say, really think about how you can at least minimize them to the absolute possible minimal level, um, and kind of work from there. Also, and I'm focused energy zone for your work zone. So, and that could be, for example, I mean, that could be wearing noise cancellation headphones, right? And listening to some soft, relaxing music, to where you're focused, you're not being distracted, putting your phone on airplane mode, so you can be totally, totally focused. Um,
Can I just
also,
add one thing to that? Because
yeah,
as you were
absolutely.
saying that, there's also, you could use essential oils. Like there are some oils that are relaxing, but some that help with you with focus and maintaining that. So I think you could also bring some of those elements in, and that is your focus zone, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then the next energy zone is your rest zone. So thinking about soft textures, warm lighting, no screens and electronics. And I know that's hard, but it's amazing on how much, you can actually reset your sleep patterns and habits, and just being able to wake up more refreshed if you cut off your screens. And that includes TV too. Like, that's just not your phone and your laptop and your iPad, but actual TV too. And I have to do better for myself in that department, because a lot of times I watch TV before I go to bed. Um, so work on kind of minimizing that. And then also give yourself some cue words: calm, restore, nurture. Anything you'd like to add into the rest zone area, Leanne?
Well, again, essential oils, a different sort, or candles, I think can also really work, which is that warm lighting, but you can get candles that are fragranted. And the thing I know about our five senses, so you see, you hear, you smell, you touch, you taste, right? They're the five senses. But the sense of smell cuts through everything much faster than the other senses. So if you
Mm-hmm.
wanna find calm and peace, if you've got a smell that brings that to you, it will calm your, parasympathetic nervous system much quicker than anything else.
Yeah.
So, that box breathing can be useful in this zone, like when you go there, intentionally breathe, like conscious breathing, but
Mm-hmm.
using a gift or a tool like a scented candle that might be lavender, or it might have a different scent that calms you, or an essential oil can really help there too.
Yeah. And for me, when you talk about that, like, usually lavender is my essential oil that I go to for that just, okay, let me just relax, rest,
Yeah.
and reset. Do you have a certain essential oil scent that is kind of your go-to?
Oh, listen, I definitely like lavender as well. Um, and I will often buy blends. You can buy essential oils that are blends, and some of them are blended for calm and relaxation. And I think ylang ylang is also in there usually. There might be some, I quite like woody scents because,
Mm-hmm.
so sandalwood is one of the ones that I really love because, again, it's grounding, right? It helps me to kind of ground myself in the space.
Yeah.
Um, so if you come to my place, Jason, you'll see candles, incense, oils everywhere. Because that sense of smell works so well. Like I use it often. And even with my kids, like I've got burners, oil burners and stuff in their rooms as well, just to help them regulate in their calm zone.
Yeah.
Because we're in a world that's coming at us all the time, especially with technology. And trying to regulate yourself post that can be difficult. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And the third zone is our creativity zone. And we all have creativity, right? And so, kind of think of, like, color. What colors give you inspiration? What colors give you reset, right? Think about what inspires you. like what inspires you, and it could be inspires you towards your purpose, or it could be inspires you to go on your next vacation or whatever. So that inspiration zone, and being in it is very important. And then also putting a chair at a different angle can change things up, and kind of reset your creative thinking. And also music, uh, which sparks flow. It's just that saying that music is the universal language, right? And it truly is. And there's so much reset, and just for my own environment, putting on music, putting on my favorite song or my favorite artist. I mean, it's just amazing, just kind of that inner reset that it gives me. And just sometimes it's like, okay, this is the new energy that I needed for like the next part of the day, or going into the evening, or to the next paper I need to write for school. Anything else that you'd like to add into the creativity zone, Leanne?
Um, this is one where I think if you can be near a window, it's also really good, because you get that sunshine, which does help those neural pathways. So I love that chair from a different angle, right? Like physically move the chair to somewhere different, right? Like allow yourself to do that. And I have different songs for different things, Jason. So I've got music that motivates me and gets me going. I've got songs that I can play to create, like to bring that creativity. I've got songs that help me to relax. So, music is another one that can really, it can shift your state instantly,
Yeah.
depending on what song or, what it is that you need to do. But creativity is something that a lot of us have forgotten, and play is so important. And creativity is kind of play. It's allowing yourself to just dabble, right? Without necessarily the perfection monster kicking in. And I think that can be really important as well, like letting go of those inner uh, stories or inner things that we tell ourselves and just
Yeah.
allow yourself, like just play. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be perfect. It doesn't have to be anything too much. But if we're in that creativity zone, we want to give ourselves a space to be creative without a particular outcome, looming over us.
Yeah, and one thing I'd like to, add into that, um, which I know both of us are creative individuals, right? It's like, but people are like, oh, I'm creative all the time, like on my phone. Like, yes, that's one spoke of creativity. But what I would also challenge people to do is just take a piece of paper, right? Draw a line down the middle and write creativity on the top, and put non-technology technology, and see what comes up for folks, right? Of like, because there's so many ways to be creative without using technology, and which I think activates our brains and all that in a very different way than doing it via electronical devices.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Um, yeah, definitely, definitely. So, really, the key is to consider that if we don't separate these spaces, our brain gets confused. Because we're trying to relax in the same place as you answer emails, or you're trying to be creative in the same space where you might watch your Netflix or your TV. And it's really hard for our brain to switch on and switch off or switch modes as it needs to. And so it's not surprising that we can struggle sometimes and that we can feel overwhelmed because of that. So by creating these spaces, we're giving ourselves the opportunity to task switch,
Mm-hmm.
or energy switch even, from one thing to the next, and doing it consciously. So actually walking away from um, your desk. And, I'm really bad at having my computer on the dining table.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm really bad at it. I'm not perfect at this. And when I move it away, it feels different in that room. It's really interesting. And
Yeah.
so finding ways to actually keep your specific spaces purpose built for that use. So my dining table remains my dining table and not my pseudo office. And then I've got a desk in another room where I actually can be working from, um, where I can then shut the computer, walk away from that room, and that's my work day done. And then, so it's still I'm a work in progress. I haven't mastered this one yet. But it is something that I'm working towards, that's for sure.
Yes, I have that too. Um, my chair that I sit in to watch TV oftentimes is my office and my classroom for school and all that. And it does feel different when, I do put that laptop electronic device actually in the space that it's supposed to be in, right?
Yeah.
So, which I think leads nicely into what does environmental well-being look like beyond the four walls of home or the office, right? So, this layer of environmental well-being is the global one. It talks about our planet, sustainability, and what does sustainability look like, right? Stewardship, and that personal and professional, responsibility, to our globe, and to that footprint of leaving it better than what we found it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of great stuff that we're going to discuss in this area of what does that environmental well-being look like at that global level.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting question because it's everywhere, isn't it? Everyone's really conscious about what's happening to our world. And this whole idea of stewardship, like for the next generations, it's not about now. And the thing that I want to say about this is that, it's not about perfection, but it's about progress, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
not about pressure, it's about awareness. When we take care of the earth around us, we feel more aligned, we feel more intentional, and we feel more connected. It actually strengthens our purpose and our collective well-being. And I think it's so important that it's the little things that we can do that make a big difference. And so these tiny habits that we can incorporate to reduce waste, recycling, reusing stuff. Like all of this has a really significant impact on our environment. Like we've got this consumerism where we keep wanting more, more, more. And we talked about this a bit last week about the kind of greed mentality. I want more
Mm-hmm.
and more. But I don't know about in America, but in Australia, what I'm so proud of watching is that the young generation, so my kids are 18 and 15 or 14, and what they're really interested in is going to op shops or vintage stores. So when I was growing up, that was not a cool thing to do, right? And yet the younger generation are actually going into these op shops or these vintage stores to buy clothing. It's cheaper, but these days it's actually not that much cheaper because it's the cool thing to do. Whoops. But it's repurposing clothing. It's recycling stuff. It's not just going out and buying more new stuff. And then we've got these cupboards that are full and overflowing of things that we don't wear. And they're also then going through their wardrobes and giving back to these stores, right? So it's this whole law of reciprocity where they're buying repurposed stuff and then they're giving back and then they're going back in and buying repurposed stuff. So they're not buying new stuff necessarily. And I think it's these tiny habits, but it makes my heart smile because, like I said, when I was growing up, it's a good chance I would have gone into an op shop to buy something. And yet
Yeah.
these days, the kids are like, oh, I'll meet you at Vinnie's or I'll meet you at the Salvos or I'll meet you wherever. And that's where they're doing their shopping. And I think that's bloody excellent.
Yeah. Yeah. And here in America, they're called thrift stores, right? So, and it's just amazing on how many people just love the thrifting and just some good stuff. I mean there's some stuff in there that like people wear once and then they bring it to the thrift shop. And so where I think thrift stores back in the day kind of got a little bit more negative rap, I guess is the way to say it, than present. But with just also with everything just skyrocketing price wise, in present day economy, like I think people are being more mindful in that consumption, right? Um, and which equals that mindful living. And I think there's a lot that us that are in the now older generations, um, um, can learn from.
Mm. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think you're absolutely right. Like my kids are teaching me stuff around this kind of environmental stuff. Like they're the ones that are coming home because they're learning it at school. And the composting and the this and that, it's just like it's really cool. Like they're much more mindful about the future of our planet Earth than our generation is. And I think we need to step up.
Yeah. I know, because I think of like, kids like your kids' age and my nieces and nephews and stuff like that. And it's just like, oh my gosh, like what are they going to have to deal with, from all the damage that's been done, right? And some that's reversible and some that's just we went too far that it's not reversible. So, it I'm glad to see that this younger generation is pushing back in this area and be like, no, like we need to be more mindful. We need to go to these op shops, thrift stores. We need to, do composting and recycling and all that kind of stuff. And to be that real kind of advocate for those avenues. Because there's only one Earth, and it has to still last for many, 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 many more millions and hopefully billions of years.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We're not going to, and this is the thing about, the earth thing. We need to do things that we may not see in our lifetime, but it's going to leave a positive impact for future generations.
Mm-hmm.
So if we plant a tree, it may not, bear fruit in our lifetime. It may not, but, it's going to support others. So we've got to think not just of ourselves, but of the future and of the upcoming generations. Because what we model, others will mirror. And if
Yeah.
we're all taking a stand here and going, hang on a second, I'm going to do this. I'm going to, do the recycling, or I'm going to repurpose furniture, or I'm going to, send my stuff to op shops, and I'm not going to throw things into waste if I can avoid it. And if we can do this and others see, we're all kind of elevating together. But it's not really about elevation, even or evolving. It's about saving this precious resource that we have called Mother Earth, that we've kind of destroyed through
Great.
negligence and greed. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So stewardship really then builds that identity and that meaning, right? Like we've got to have this kind of idea around this. What does it mean for me? And how can I leave a positive footprint? Like one of the messages that I learned years ago is leave every space better than you found it. So if you go to the park, don't throw your rubbish on the ground, but if you see rubbish, pick it up. Like that's leaving the space better than I found it. We
Yep.
have it on New Year's Day, I think it is. Anyway, one day a year in Australia, it's called Clean Up Australia Day, and all Aussies get outside and they go and clean up all the rubbish off beaches and parks and all sorts of stuff, which is lovely for that one day a year. But what about the other 364 or 5 days, right? Depending if it's a leap year or not. Like, let's leave every space better than when we found it. If we go somewhere and we see rubbish on the floor, pick it up. Or
Right.
if there's stuff that we can do to make it better, then do so. Um, yeah. So I
Yeah.
think this whole idea of stewardship, for future generations really does help build our identity as a group of humans who actually care.
Yeah. And before we go into like our some practical tools and fast wins for people, and I think this might have been in episode one, I think, where I talked about the 2030 global agenda through the United
Mm.
Nations, right? And since we are a global podcast, it is a global agenda, and there is an area on environmental um, and climate change, go there and see what you can do at like your local level. You don't have to do something at the global level. I mean, you can, but see how you can get involved in the local level and help the United Nations to continue to accomplish these goals to as close as possible. And it's just there's just a plethora of knowledge. And like I said in episode one, there's 17 goals, and environment and climate is one of those.
So we should put the link in the um, where this video will be, Jason, so people can go and have access to that easily. I think that would be useful. And you
Absolutely.
said something there that I just wanted to double click on. If we do something in our environment, in our community, it is a global event
Yep.
because of the ripple effect of all of these things. If everyone does something in their own space and their own little bubble in the world, um, that has a global effect, right?
Yeah.
So, um,
Absolutely.
yeah. So start close to home.
Yeah. It's like, use that creativeness within you, right? Because it's amazing if you just kind of allow yourself to lean into that creativity. It's amazing what you can think of. And you can do it you can do it on your own. You can do it with a group of friends, family, whatever. You can make it fun too, right? So every little tick counts towards the bigger agenda. Because if we just imagine if the billions of people who live on this earth, if they all did a little bit, it's amazing.
Yeah. Again, micro habits, little things
Micro
that
habits.
make a big difference.
Absolutely. So for folks that are thinking, well, like, well, what are some practical tools, right? And so I'm going to discuss a few. Leanne's going to discuss a few, um, and these really kind of come from our previous discussion in today's episode. So the first one is let light in. Morning sunlight helps to reset your circadian rhythm. It helps you just to kind of just feel better, right? So let the light in. Bring nature inside. One plant can reduce stress by 12 to 15%. And I bet you most people do not know that.
No.
Um, so, bring a plant in, bring two plants in if you want. But just remember to bring the nature inside your home, or even inside your workspace too. Create one single calm space. It could be a corner, it could be a chair, a candle. So, there's helpful tips for those that have a multi-room home to those who just have a one-room home. And be conscious and intentional about decluttering one single small zone in your space. But don't overwhelm yourself, right? So don't feel like you have to like declutter your whole house, but just one space that you can go in and just kind of just be, right? And then use scent intentionally. Um, use lavender for calm, citrus for motivation. So those are five fast wins that you can jot down and just be intentional about. You don't have to incorporate all of them in one week. You can pick one per week to do, or two per week. So I'll turn over to Leeanne for some more environmental well-being wins.
Yeah, because these ones are more for inside our space, right? Inside our four walls. And if we can shift how we feel internally into like in the house, then we're going to go out into the world and be better humans. And vice versa. If we do right things out there, we're going to come into our homes and be better humans for those that are nearest and dearest to us. So some of the things that we can do really is to um again, even within our space, define your areas, your energy zones, you know, have a zone for work, have a zone for rest, have a zone for creativity. And even if it's taking a cup of tea and going and sitting on your front step, right? Like if that's your rest zone, but just do little things because that also gives you the sunshine, the fresh air, it builds your state. And really go through your home and do an energy audit. Like actually pick things up. It's a bit, is it Maria Kondo? Like pick things up and ask yourself, does this give me energy or does this drain me? Does it make me feel good? Does it make me feel bad? I'm a little bit of a sentimentalist. So I have things in my home that people have given me that I don't necessarily love, um, but I don't want to get rid of it because it was a gift and I feel bad. But that's actually heavy weight.
Mhm.
It's actually heavy weight. And so one of the things that I've started to do is to go through my house and do this energy audit and get rid of things, but I'm not throwing them out. I'm taking them to thrift stores or op shops or whatever the case may be, because somebody else could get great joy. While for me, it's just collecting dust,
Yeah.
right? So, and it's draining my energy because there's just it's there and it doesn't need to be. So I highly recommend doing these energy audits in your home and really asking yourself, like, feel into it. And because most of us are kind of lost touch with our feeling around what's giving us joy and what's giving us stress, right? So give yourself the time to do that. As I said earlier, textures and colors, like use them in your space to regulate your nervous system. So again, hold up colors, go and touch textures. Does this feel good to me or does it feel icky? Like I can't stand certain textures, like it just makes my blood run cold. And other textures I love. So like corduroy, that straight, like
Mhm.
can't, can't deal, can't deal. But then there's other textures that I actually really love. There's colors that make me feel good, and there's colors that kind of don't. And even the colors that we wear can have a big impact on our mood, and how we show up in the world. So, be mindful of the textures and the colors to help regulate your nervous system.
Yeah.
Reset your space nightly. So when you wake up in the morning, your future self will thank you. There's two habits that I have before I go to bed every day, besides locking the door and making sure that we're secure. But I tidy up the cushions on the lounge and I make sure that my sink has no dishes in it. So when I wake up in the morning, there's clean space and my lounge looks comfortable and inviting. And I don't sit on my lounge first thing in the morning because I'm always rushing around getting kids out of the house. But those two things give the future me that mental clarity. It's like, okay, there's space and it's clear and it works. So, you know, do something nightly that your future self will thank you for, because sustainability is the other one, right? Start small. Choose one mindful swap that you can do. If there's things in your house that you don't want, gift them to people who would love them. Um, I know, again, I don't know about America, but in Australia, if you put something on the street with a sign saying free, right? People will take it. We
Oh
have
yeah.
council collections here that come around a couple of times a year, like set days where you can put things out onto the street and the council will take it to landfill. But can I tell you, those days are the busiest days in our street because people are coming with their utes and their cars. And that saying of one man's trash is another man's treasure is
Mhm.
really, so think about how can I swap this potentially with somebody else, or how can I gift this or pay it forward for somebody who may need it rather than me just holding on to it and hoarding it if it's not actually working for me. Small steps, small steps. We say this every week, small steps, start with something small. One little thing can make a significant difference in the way we show up.
Oh, absolutely. And when you were talking about that energy audit with your home, right? I mean, there's some stuff that, that's draining your energy now, but at one time gave you energy,
Yeah.
right? And that's okay to acknowledge that. And that's okay to be like, you know what? This served me in my life at blank time. It's no longer serving me now, but it may serve someone else, like you said, as the biggest joy, right?
Mhm.
So, and I kind of say that to Leanne, for those individuals out there who really, really struggle with holding on to a lot of the materialistic stuff and a lot of the things, right? Um, where they just have this like emotional attachment to it. But I think if you kind of flip that script and reframe it of energy audit in your home, like I mean, just even for me saying that, it just kind of lights up a light to be like, okay, yeah, like when I get home, because I'm traveling right now on the East Coast, like energy audit for the home, right? And, and it's amazing on just, and I can only speak for me, right? On just the goodness that I feel like when I bring stuff to the thrift shop, right? To say, you know what, it served for a period of time. Now it goes to the next person. And it's interesting when you go in the thrift shop and you see stuff that you've donated. um, and it's just like, okay, yep, this is the right place that it's supposed to be in. So um, yeah. So I just wanted to put that little extra there for the energy audit because I know there are people out there who really, really struggle with giving stuff away, and especially if it's stuff from family, right? Where,
Sentimental. Like there's normally some emotional attachment to it. I struggle with that, Jason. I'm one of those people that struggle with that.
yeah, yeah, and so yeah, so if we had a challenge for folks, do that energy audit. It's a great time of year, right? Um, and as you're decorating your house for the holidays, that's also a good time too, right? Because you're kind of putting stuff away or be like, you know what? Like, do I really need this anymore? It just isn't giving me anything. It's not giving me any oomph in life. So yeah, so I think this is a great time between now and the first part of the year to do this energy audit and just kind of be with it and because what would life be like, right? I mean, going into questions to ask yourself, but what would life be like if you had everything in your home that gave you energy?
Mm,
I mean, think about that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that it's a joy to walk into all the time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Another question that you can ask yourself is what does your space say about the season of your life that you're in right now? Are you in um an open kind of space or are you in a closed space? Are you in a bright space? Like where are you in your life right now? And what does your physical environment say about that?
Hmm.
Because they often say what's happening external is a reflection of what's happening internally, right? So it's interesting. And maybe we need to do some more internal work.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then, another question is where does your environment support you? Right? And where does it sabotage you? And you can think of that, home, work, um, outside of the walls, like in climate change or, leaving those, like for example, like if you walk through a park and you see rubbish or trash and you walk by it, but that's something that just irritates you, pick it up, like you said earlier, right? And so it's looking at that, where does it support you, where does it irritate you, and how can you turn those irritants into support, right? Like how do you flip that script or flip that switch?
Yeah.
And sometimes that's just tossing it out. And but then there's the sometimes of the reframe, right? Where it's like, okay, yeah, if like I'm walking down the sidewalk and I see some trash on the street and that irritates me, pick it up,
Mm.
you know? And it would be amazing on how much that makes you feel better internally.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing I'd love to do is set a challenge for all of us. What part of our home could become a well-being sanctuary? Is there a corner, a chair, a window, a space that you can put things that are beautiful, that make you feel calm and peace and joyful and actually create a little sanctuary, like your little zone of goodness that you can go and sit into, the candles, the oils, like whatever it might be. But I'd love to set that challenge for all of us because I think that our homes just become a functionality and not a place that's a sanctuary sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, and so I'm putting my hand up. I'm going to challenge myself to do that also.
Me too. Me too. And and I think that there's, if folks look through previous episodes, right? Like there's maybe not all of them, but there's plenty of them that you could bring into this well-being sanctuary, to help with that emotional regulation, that intellectual, mental well-being, etc., that spiritual well-being, like at your core. So, I mean, you could bring in physical well-being. It could be a place where you do some workout and to help you to, regulate different parts of yourself. So, um, love that. Love that well-being sanctuary.
Yeah. It's something
Yeah.
I definitely want to do. So again, we encourage you just adapt one small habit that you want to adopt this month, um, to really create that space so you can thrive and not just survive,
Yeah.
because everything in our environment impacts us and we impact the environment. Um,
Right.
so the more that we can do to adopt a little habit to create something different, or a space that actually nurtures our soul, um, is going to have an impact on everybody around you.
Yeah. And I think that's something that leans into that, Leanne, right? With being in the crux of the holiday season, right? However people celebrate. I mean, it can be a stressful time of the year.
Yeah.
And, there's those people who just get energized by the holidays. It brings them joy and energy and renew and all that. But then there's a lot of people who get so drained by the holidays and emotionally drained. So, you know, you don't have to wait till the new year to set up this well-being sanctuary. It could be something that you set since we're at the beginning of December, set up a little space now and where you can just go in and just, okay, like the stress of going out and buying presents or um like, oh my gosh, I gotta be with family for a whole week. And, I mean, there's just so many different um, wins that come with the holidays. And then there's a lot of things that come as a drain for people too. So don't think you have to do this well-being sanctuary in the new year. You can actually start it up so that you can thrive through the end of this year.
And it could, like I said, it could be as simple as a beautiful chair with a comfortable cushion by a window, right? Like it doesn't have to be, um, you don't have to buy things to do it. You've already got the things. It's just, and it might just be reshaping one room, one corner, one something.
Yeah.
Because of environmental well-being really isn't about having the perfect home. And it's certainly not about becoming a minimalist, because that's never going to happen in my world, right? Really, I try, it just doesn't happen. And I'm okay with that. But what it is about, it's about creating spaces that support your nervous system. And that then in turn supports your goals, your growth, um, and your overall well-being. So just create little spaces, micro changes that can really support everything that you want to do and bring into the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And lastly, it's all about remembering our responsibility to the world that we live in, so that you can even think about it, is like kind of leaning into your global mindset, right? Um, because at the end of the day, well-being is collective. It's not singular, right? So it goes in this loop. And so when you think of it as being collective, you can also know that and lean in more to that entity of when we care for our environment, we're caring for ourselves too. We're caring for ourselves, we're caring for our families, our friends, future generations, et cetera. Because, we all just have this short time on Earth. And, why not put it as a positive step forward and leaving, like, we said at the beginning, leaving the world with a better footprint than the one that we found it in. So, yeah, so just remember to think that well-being is collective, it's not singular.
Yeah. And small differences make a huge, well, small shifts can make a big difference in that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Those little micro habits.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to creating my little well-being sanctuary, I have to say,
I know,
or
me
or
too.
decluttering it because I've had one and then I put stuff there and now it's no longer my sanctuary. So I want to go and clear that space now after our conversation today.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, what a great conversation. Really have enjoyed this. So, Jason, are we ready to go into book recommendations?
We are, absolutely.
All right, give me 2 seconds so I can share my screen. Here we go. So you can see that.
We can.
Awesome. So the first book, I've already kind of alluded to it, and it's a book that many, many people have heard about, but it's the Marie Kondo book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. And again, it's not about minimalism. It's about that energetic alignment with what supports you, that energy audit that we were talking about. So it links beautifully to the conversation that we've had today to remove the clutter, so we can find that calm, to get things rid of things that feel heavy for us so we can have that lightness. And then gift those things to somebody else who could absolutely love them. So that's the first book for today. Jason, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah. So the second book, Atomic Habits, which is by James Clear, um, a must mention about this book is that he emphasizes that environment is stronger than motivation, and habits are shaped by cues in our physical space. So a lot to look for there. I haven't read this book. It's one I'm going to be putting onto my growing reading list. Need to purchase a few more credits there on my Audible. But yes, it's a must read book from everything that I've read about the book, and again, like I said, he emphasizes that environment is stronger than motivation and that habits are shaped by cues in our physical space. And I think that's just something to actually just take a step back on, to reflect, like, what is my physical space? How is that shaping my habits?
Yeah.
Right. And like at a subconscious level. And I know, it happens for all of us. So I think that just alone, before you dive into the book, or, an executive summary in the book, is, to think about is, how are your habits shaped by your physical space?
Yeah. It's a great book. I've read it. And it's a book that I recommend to many because he also talks about micro habits, small things, making those small changes, which are really important, and also habit stacking. So if there's a habit that you've got that's good and you want to build something else, stack it on there. So just to give you an example of that, I want to start taking vitamins every day. And I'd bought them and I wasn't taking them every day. I just kept forgetting. But the one thing that I absolutely do every day is make coffee. It's my first thing that I do every day, right? So I moved the vitamins that I wanted to take to my coffee machine. So as I'm there making my coffee, because I make a cappuccino every morning, um, the vitamins are in my line of vision. So now there's no question that I take them every day. So habit stacking can really help us.
Yeah.
So it's a great book to help us create new behaviors in our world.
Yeah.
Now, the third one I haven't read. It's called The One Wild and Precious Life, but I just loved the title. And it's actually an Australian author. And it's again this hopeful book about reconnecting with nature, being responsible, and living a meaningful life. And given the conversation that we've had today, it really is about, bringing nature into our world, having that sunshine, being mindful of the way we're living. Um, and so I thought I would put this book on the top list, and this is actually one that I'm have got on my to read list now as well. So books, books, and books. That is
Books,
the
books,
one
books.
thing in my house that would I have many books.
You have the Library of Congress in your house.
I have many books. And if you anybody who knows me who might be listening to this will just laugh because I have piles of books everywhere. Um, so I need to find a better way of keeping them in a way that doesn't feel heavy. But anyway, that's another story for another day. So let's move into our top tips. We've already kind of spoken to these, but we'll just double click on them. Jason, do you want to start with the first one?
Yeah, and I think that this, speaks well to what we were just talking about, right? It's about curating your space to support your nervous system, right? So that you don't have these heavy feelings or these overwhelm, et cetera, but that you can have joy when you walk into the space and aliveness and thriveness, right? So, a takeaway from this top tip is that our brains are always scanning for the environment that you're in for safety and stress. So the more light, um, declutteredness, color, decluttering of noise can help help bring you into that neutral space, right? So, to kind of help your brain out a little bit, to give it a little less fussiness. Um, and when you have this neutral space, then it shapes your mood, your focus, and your emotional regulation in a in a healthy space. Um, so as you're creating your well-being sanctuary and looking at the end of the year into the new year is how can you create your space, and even for work too, right, where we're at a lot of the day, how can you curate that to help your nervous system, like if especially if you have a high stress job, how can you make that space more enjoyable for the time that you're in it, and to have one less stress on that nervous system and a little less work for your brain to do.
Yeah. So a quick win on this is open your blinds, clean one surface, bring in a plant. Not big things. Tiny environmental shifts create big energetic shifts. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. So the second one is, create energy zones for work, rest, and creativity. Do create these and sanctuary. I want the sanctuary in there. Like so, work, rest, creativity, and sanctuary.
Yes.
So if you can, if you haven't got a room, create a corner because your environment actually teaches your brain how to behave. So when everything happens in the same space, as we said earlier, your nervous system stays confused and overstimulated. So to turn that down, right, create some areas, even just designate one little corner for focus, one little corner for that restoration, and one little corner for inspiration. Even if they're just tiny little spaces, but if you can separate them out, your brain is going to thank you because it will be calm, not confused. It'll feel at peace rather than overstimulated or overwhelmed. And anything that
Yes.
we can do to turn down that overwhelm and burnout feeling that so many people are suffering is useful because burnout isn't about being overworked. It's about the way we feel. And if we can feel good in our space, it's going to turn down the dial on that burnout feeling.
Absolutely. So for those people who live and work in super small spaces, there's wins for you there. There's strategies. You know, Even if you live in a small space, versus a multi-room house, or you have a window office, in a corporate space. So there's strategies that we're giving for all folks across the pendulum.
Hmm.
And our final top tip for today's episode is make one sustainable swap this month. So, environmental well-being extends beyond your home to the planet, right? Sustainability doesn't have to be overwhelming. Those tiny shifts that we've been talking about can create powerful long-term impact. So, even if it's keeping your neighborhood that you live in, more tidy and more beautiful for folks who come through it, either walking or driving, that's one small sustainable swap. Like you don't have to do something so gargantuous that it's because it becomes so overwhelming that you're like, nah, I don't have the energy for that. So, think in those little micro habits. And those habits, just choose one, right? uh, you can do one a week, you can do one a month to, and those can be in the areas of reducing waste. Reuse something, I mean, it could be reusing a shopping bag, right? To like, you know what, I'm going to go to the market and I'm going to use this plastic bag that I got the last time that I went to the market. I mean, and a lot of them, at least here in the United States, say reusable. So,
Mhm.
they don't have to go in the trash once you get it. So reuse something. Um, Buy consciously. We are in the season of buying right now. So buy consciously, buy stuff that's going to be meaningful and impactful and not just contribute to your own clutter or because we're in the gift giving season to someone else's clutter. Um, and or also buy or and add some small eco-friendly practice to your routine. Just choose one. You don't have to choose something big, but just choose something that, you could tag along with something like that habit stacking, right? Versus like, oh my gosh, like I don't have any more time to add one more thing. Add it with something that you're already doing, or look at something that you're already doing and say, hey, is there an eco-friendly way to do this differently? So use your creativity to, in these areas of choosing the habit or habits. Is there anything else that you'd like to add on to this particular one, Leeanne?
Yeah, it was interesting because as you were saying something there, I just thought it is the time of year of consumption, and rather than buying a thing, buy an experience.
Mhm.
Give somebody the opportunity to do something rather than just to have something.
Yeah.
You know, because there are memories that are made, and those kind of make us feel good as well. And you mentioned the bags. In Australia, most shops actually charge you for bags now. So it's in our best interest, right? To reuse bags because they're charging us for them everywhere we go. Um, and my groceries come in bags. I get them delivered to the house. And I use those bags then as my garbage bags, right?
Mhm.
And then so it is this recycling and repurposing to do that. So it's the little things that we can do that have a big difference. So, rather than buying somebody a thing, perhaps buy them an experience, a memory making something, which will last much longer in their mind than potentially a thing that sits on their shelf.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. And I think, to add to that, Leanne, too, right? Like, because I hear a lot of people say, oh, well, but I don't know what they like to do, or I don't know, ask, you know, be curious, ask the subtle questions. Or, like if you have friends who are entrepreneurs, right, who are just starting out, ask them, is there something that they need for their business?
mm,
Right? Like, do they need a Zoom account or do they need, uh, um, flip chart paper or whatever? I mean, there's things where people are like,
lighting, right?
lighting, exactly, right? Like, or like, if they're doing a podcast like you and I are doing, like a podcast microphone. I mean, there's so many affordable things out there, right? And versus just like, oh God, why did this is just something that I'm going to throw in the corner, buy them something that they can use or experience because they're going to be so more grateful and they're going to find more joy in that. So, but I think if I had to leave anything with people is be ask curious questions.
Yeah.
Um, and you don't have to be super direct about them, but you can ask them in a subtle enough way, um, where you're finding out helpful information, to help you in this consumption season or, in this shopping season. Um, and, definitely as entrepreneurs, as you and I are, I mean, there's like just the little things of like, just even flip chart paper, like, oh my God, like, because flip chart paper is not cheap, you know, um, it's those little things that can add up and, be helpful to one's, business more than people know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us today.
Yes, absolutely. So do we want to tell them about episode 11, which is the final episode in our well-being series, which is incredible to think that we're already at the end of this particular series, not the season, but the series. Do you want to tell them about it,
Yeah.
Leanne?
Yeah. So next week we are looking at technology, digital and technology well-being, and adapting with intention, right? So making tech a tool, not a trap. Using it rather than have it using you. So I'm looking forward to this one because we are so consumed, or we consume so much technology these days. Like our devices are with us everywhere, everywhere. Um, and if we can, I don't want to punish it and say that it's bad because some of it is really good, but it's about boundaries, right? So using it as a tool, not a trap. I'm very much looking forward to our conversation next week. And
Yes.
here in Australia, the government have just come in to say that they're shutting down social media for kids under 16. I'm not sure how they're navigating it, but they're just shutting it down. So there's, you know, governments are making differences in this space. Um, so it'll be interesting to see how all of that plays out. But I think it's a rich conversation to have and quite a good one to finish our series on because technology is our best friend, it's our greatest tool. And some of these things then become our master, and that's not healthy. So, navigating that space.
Absolutely. And then, just as a little ping into the future after episode 11, before the end of the year, we will have two exciting holiday episodes to leave our listeners with at the end of this year and right into the beginning of the new year before we um, come back live in the new year with our next series, which we'll be talking about a little bit down the road. But
Yeah.
I just wanted to ping for folks that there will be two holiday episodes in December before we all go out on the holiday.
Yeah. So, as usual, we really thank you for joining us. We hoped that this has sparked something new for you, an insight, a fresh perspective, or even just a question that's worth exploring or a space that's worth creating.
Absolutely. And always here at Let's Talk, our mission is simple: to have those conversations that matter and to remind you that you don't have to figure out this complex thing called life on your own and alone. We're here to have these conversations with you and to help give you new ways of thinking about things and new questions to ask for your own curiosity. And to help give you a little bit of hope for the future.
Yeah. So again, if you've enjoyed today's episode, please, tell a friend, share it, subscribe, and keep the conversation going with us.
Because when we talk,
We really talk.
and anything is possible
So let's talk
with real conversations.
and limitless possibilities. Thanks, everybody. Have a good
Thank you.
morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you're calling in from in the world.
Have a good day.